Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation.
Is this yours?
Yes.
Yes? So tell me what you were planning to do with my money. Because it's my money. What?
It's not what you think.
Oh, no, you're not going to run away with my money.
From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm the show's producer, Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
The most important play I've seen this year is Ruined. We're very honored to have with us its playwright, Lynn Nottage, and one of the most prominent members of the company, although your whole company is fantastic, Saidah Arrika Ekulona. Welcome to Theater Talk.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome. And I second what Susan says. I mean, we've had a lot of plays this year, a lot of new plays coming on Broadway, but the most exciting play I've seen in a long time, really, is Ruined at the Manhattan Theater Club.
Thank you.
And if you're a producer watching this show, you must move this play to Broadway. Plays like this have to have a life on Broadway.
Have to have a life.
Broadway is going to have a life.
Yeah.
That's our little speech for the day.
Thank you.
Welcome to Theater Talk. Lynn, this is a play about a woman, played by Saidah, who is running a bar, whorehouse, in the Congo, and being buffeted by this constant political turmoil and violence surrounding her. Did you travel to the Congo to research this play, to get a handle on the political situation there, to write this play?
I traveled twice to East Africa. The first time I went with the director, Kate Worski, to Uganda because the conflict was still very much...
Raging there.
Yeah, raging. And we interviewed Congolese refugee women that were flooding over the border. And so the experience they had was extremely immediate. And we began hearing stories that I had yet to hear in the press, which were stories of rape, and rape in particularly brutal ways.
Did you go to East Africa with the intention of researching in a play, or was it just to go there to see what was happening, and then the play came from your talking to these women?
No, we actually went in search of a play. I found myself with some time on my hand and not knowing what I wanted to write next, and director Kate was game. She's like, I'll go with you. And the next thing we knew, we were in Kampala hunting down a play.
Now, Saidah, the character you're playing, her name is?
Mama Nadi.
Mama Nadi. She's a bit like Mother Courage, isn't she? I mean, she survives in spite of it all.
Yes, she is like Mother Courage. I know that Lynn had thoughts of maybe writing her own Mother Courage, but then we've had discussions where she told me that she created her own kind of character. But Mama Nadi is first and foremost a survivor, and such a force of nature that I think the comparison to Mother Courage is immediate, because not many other characters are like that.
What is it in this character that drives her to survive? I mean, why does she not? She's been through horrific experiences in her life. Why does she not just give up and fold the tent?
Because she, I think there's a certain amount of stubbornness, and I also think that, you know, that's just not a part of her personality. I think that this is a woman who, from a very young age, knew how to survive. I think later on in life, when circumstances happened to her and around her, it just kicked in even more. She's just, excuse me, she's just even more of a force. So it wasn't even a question. That's what I think.
Lynn went to the Congo. How did you prepare as an actress to play this role? And also the role of a woman who's much older than you really are, it would seem, yes.
Well,
yeah, I have to say, I didn't expect you to be quite so young and cute, actually. In real life, I mean, you're very adorable on the stage, too, but, you know, a little more formidable in that, in that part.
Well, thank you. I'm very appreciative. Well, about the age thing, I think it's just, I kind of have an old soul, and it just... I don't know what to say about that. You know, it just came through. In terms of research, I've seen a few films. I started reading this wonderful book by Brian Mueller, but I kind of had to stop because the violence that he wrote about so descriptively, it was starting to just affect me in ways like I couldn't sleep. Lynn and Kate, because they had been to Uganda, they were always telling us different stories, and I also was thinking about my grandmothers who are survivors, you know, not in such dire circumstances.
Of these revolutions in Africa?
No, just women who are very strong and knew how to persevere and to keep going. And then also, you know, Lynn's writing is so beautiful and the play is so epic and it's poetic that you just, it's almost like you work and then you let it in. And therefore that completes the work that you're doing.
Let me ask you, Lynn, why is it, when you were your research in Africa and in this play, why is it that these men who are fighting all the time, so the government's in power, then it's out of power, the revolutionaries are in control of this area, why do they rape and attack women? What is that? Is that a political expression in some way?
I think that that's the million-dollar question. Why do they do what they do? I think that
Why don't they just kill each other?
I think rape is a weapon of war. I think that they rape in order to demoralize the community and destroy community, and it's a really quick, expedient way of doing it. And I also think that there's a legacy of brutality in the Congo that began with colonialism. And so I think that the people feel completely dehumanized and acting upon that.
And rape, we should say, cross-culturally.
It's
well, it was always considered the spoils of war in ancient times.
But you know, but what's really interesting about this conflict in the Congo is that rape has always been, since war was first introduced to mankind, rape has always been used as a weapon. But in the Congo, it's a particularly brutal form of rape, and it's also done with such frequency that we almost can't explain it.
Can we explain what the title "ruin" means? What it means to be? What does it mean to be ruined?
It's up to you.
Well, ruin specifically refers to a very, very brutal way in which a woman is raped, both physically and psychologically. And physically, it means that she has fistula, which means that she has a tear between her vagina and anus, to be quite graphic about it.
Yeah,
and so she literally has been destroyed.
Right.
And there's been a lot of questions from the audience. They really want to know exactly what ruined means. Excuse me. And it's not genital mutilation. It's the fistula. And so when they discover that it's even worse than they thought while they were watching the show, it affects them even more.
Now, in this play, in the whorehouse that you're running, two young girls come to it, one of whom is ruined.
Right.
Yes.
And your character's initial response is, I want to take care of her. She's not going to be a worker for me. She's not going to be an earner for me.
No, she's not going to make me any money.
But why does she take her in, though?
Well, she's Christian's niece, and because of the relationship with Christian, the character,
who's a friend of hers,
who's a friend of hers,
who's in love with her.
Yes, he is, and they've known each other for a few years, and they have a wonderful banter, and they enjoy each other's company. I think mostly it's because it's Christian's niece. I also think because Mama, as strong as she is, and as much of a survivor as she has a great deal of compassion for people.
What makes Mama Nottie very different from Brecht's Mother Courage is that Mama Nottie hasn't lost her capacity to nurture and to love.
All right.
And so I think that that's in part why she embraces these young
We only
women.
have a minute, but I want to ask you a question. I was talking to a writer last night who said to me, I don't know the story ahead of time. I start to write and the characters speak to me, and it's like the story is being channeled through me. Do you have that feeling?
Well, I did in this particular play. I thought I knew where I wanted to go, and I was surprised by where it ended. Yeah.
Yeah. Just on that point, though, I wanted to say, speaking of the character Mama Nottie, you said she hasn't lost her compassion.
She hasn't.
And she's very charming throughout. But what she has lost is her ability to connect really to other people.
Yeah,
that's what she's
disconnected from her own emotions and her own feelings.
Right.
And it's the journey to find those.
And the ending, which we won't give away, I think is very powerful. But it has been criticized by some critics for being too sentimental. How do you respond to that criticism?
Well, I can tell you how I respond to that is those people have probably never been to Africa. And
that's a fair point, I think.
And I think that they don't understand how necessary that optimism is. It's like I repeatedly hear from women in particular, but from men, particularly African men and African women, and they say, thank you for the ending.
It's a beautiful
Thank you for giving that to us.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. The play is Ruined at the Manhattan Theater Club, written by Lynn Nottage, terrific play. And
Come on.
Saidah
Arrika
Ekulona.
Ekulona.
I almost got it. All right, you knock it out of the park.
You do it. You're great. You're
Thank
just
you
terrific.
very much.
The wonderful, wonderful play. Thanks for being our guest tonight at Theater Talk.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I'm finally really happy to be on the show. You see it forever.
I want to go home. No. Now look at me. Look here. If you leave, where will you go, huh? You sleep in the bush. Scrounge for food in a stinking refugee camp. There is a war going on, and it is unsafe for a woman alone. Now, we know this. It is better this way. Here. But I want to... You want to what, huh? You want to be thrown back up there? Where will you go, Salima, huh? Your village? Your husband? How much goodness did they show you? Why did you say that? I'm sorry.
There's a new major drama critic in town, an insightful thinker, a great writer, and I must say Elisabeth Vincentelli is expanding the gender perspective of the New York Drama Critics Circle. Elisabeth, welcome to Theater Talk.
Not only the gender perspective, but also the average age of the New York Drama Critics Circle has sort of crashed through the floor with the addition of you.
Well, you know, I'm going to try to keep it real, keep it street, which is a rare thing in theater, I guess.
Well, welcome to Theater Talk, and welcome to the New York Post, where you and I are now colleagues.
Cohorts, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, you are probably, Elisabeth, the only drama critic who's been hired by a newspaper in the country, and you may be the final one. There's a lot of concern about the future of drama criticism at newspapers. I mean, is there a good reason for this concern? And are you worried that criticism is sort of losing its influence and impact?
Yes, I think there is very good reason to be worried. It's a really bad time for publishing and for criticism, and the two together is just like some nuclear meltdown of horror. Some people would say that actually criticism is very healthy because there's so many more outlets for it, meaning blogs and the such, but I really believe in the old school tradition of the critic as someone who's trained and who knows their stuff.
Not just an audience member with a computer who's spouting off an opinion.
Pretty much. I am not going to Twitter at intermission, and but you know, there's better things to do, like eavesdropping in a women's room. But it's a pretty scary time. It's a pretty scary time.
Where did you learn your stuff?
Yeah, and what's your background?
Well, my background is actually I'm more of a generalist. Actually, I'm a completely insane avid reader, and I've been going, my parents took me, my first show when I was 5. I remember we were in Paris, I was getting my tonsils at, I grew up in France. And my mother thought it was a great idea the day after the operation to take me to the opera. And so I had been to see Coppelia, and so I'd been eating strawberry sorbet to soothe my tonsils, and I threw it up all over the grand staircase.
So that was your first review?
That was my first review. Quite a splash.
Broadway's got its hands full with this one.
And it's been, you know, it's been uphill ever since. When I was in college is when I really started in Paris again, was when I really started to go very, very seriously to the theater. Theater and music were my two main things.
When did you start learning English?
In school, I have to thank the French public schools for that. And I moved to the US to go to graduate school. And I've been here for 20 years. And I'm actually now a US citizen as well.
But, you know, you remind me of your background here, something that John Simon once wrote, very famous critic John Simon wrote about being a critic, which is that it's not enough just to be obsessed and in love with the theater. You have to have a knowledge of all of the arts, because the theater encompasses all the arts. Set design, end color, lighting, in addition to acting, directing.
Movement, dance, choreography, there's all that. And I also think it's really important to see theater as part of a kind of a continuum of life, I would say. For me, it's really important to not to see it as something you do once in a while, a very special thing you do once in a while, and you spend hundreds of dollars for it, and that's it, you do it once a year.
A special occasion.
Right, special occasion. For me, it should be part it's part of daily life. It's something you do, you talk about it with your friends. Now, obviously, there's economic reasons where this is not as
part of your life, right?
possible as it could be. but that's the ideal for me, that it's part of your life. And so I think it makes it easier for people to take risks, because if you go once a year and you see something bad, it's a really big disappointment. If you go several times a year and you see something bad, but kind of maybe stimulating, I think you're more inclined to go again and try it. And it's easier to be challenged, I think.
With that theory in mind, though, you are going to review much more than just Broadway, because Broadway is a special event because of the ticket prices. But you are familiar with off-Broadway, downtown theater, and you feel that that should all be brought in the mix with reviewing Broadway
I think
at the same time.
I really don't like the idea that theater in New York is Broadway and Broadway is theater. It's an equation that's made a lot. Like, theater, Broadway is theater. It is completely wrong, and I think it's actually very destructive to theater in New York. It's a really terrible worldview in general. And, well, not to mention that very often, as we know, a lot of off, or even sometimes off, the Urinetown thing is the most famous example, makes it to Broadway. But Broadway is not... I don't think it's the be-all and end-all. Unfortunately, again, there's economic constraints that prevent shows from being viable off or off. That's an entirely different thing. But that said, there are extremely great theatrical experiences off and off, and in dance, in the kind of weird hybrid performance art, like movement theater, that's kind of between dance and theater, that I personally am a big fan of. At the New York Post, are you going to be given the range to explore all of these other things besides Broadway? Well, I hope so. I mean, the thing is, clearly there's limitations just in terms of space. There's only so much space we have. But I'm going to start blogging regularly for the Post, and that's where I'll cover things that may not appear to be even like theatrical at first glance. Like, for instance, like if the Pet Shop Boys have a new album, that to me counts almost as a theatrical event. They've done theater on the West End, and it's very easy and fun to do a little post about why it's a theatrical pop band. Or talking about the theatricality of Dancing with the Stars, a show I am obsessed with. It's kind of all over, and I like bringing that in to my criticism.
And I think that's essential, that someone at a mainstream newspaper is looking beyond Broadway as a focus, because that you will show that to producers. Right now, I've been told, Michael told me that none of the producers, because of the economy, are willing to take a risk on American plays. They won't even bring the great play Ruined onto Broadway right now because it's not British, essentially. And, with younger critics like you looking at alternative things, we were just talking about the Worcester Group, I think that'll make those things more viable to get into the public eye and make some money to keep those companies going.
Well, I think it's easy to forget that people do respond to something new. If you look at some of the most, it's a huge example, but when Star Wars came along, there had never been a Star Wars before. Or Jaws, or
West Side Story.
Or West Side Story. And then, of course, there's all the, lesser versions of that imitators, and they tend not to do well. I will just use an Example. Let's take Hairspray and then Cry Baby. It's not going to strike twice. So I think now of all time is the moment to take risks and try to expand the audience of Broadway and theater in general. Rely more, try to get the locals back into the seats. Because for a long time, this business has been geared for the tourists. I think the latest figure was 60% of tickets sold last season were to tourists. And I think it's crucial for the vitality of theater here that we get local butts back in those seats. And right now they are in the seats, but they're off and off. If you go to the Kitchen, it's 99% local.
Yes.
But of course the Kitchen is $15 a seat.
Well, there you go.
Or St. Anne's, $55, $60.
St. Anne's Warehouse out in Brooklyn.
Right. But so what you say about the antipathy of producers that they new things come in, they're so excited, and then, as you say, they just try to create imitations of that former new thing rather than say, no, now we have to go out and find another fabulous new thing. But that requires a lot of work, scouting, which you seem to be willing to do.
Yeah, it's really fun. The thing is, if you're a critic, I think you have to see a lot, and you have to kiss a lot of frogs. just have to kiss a lot frogs.
And sit in a lot of basements.
Then waiting for the day when one of them, ta-da, you know.
Speaking of frogs, I'm sorry?
No, I was going to say, the thing with me is that I've been doing this for years now, but I am really not jaded. I think it's important also, when I see people at the theater who are just kind of like... just
colleagues in the New York Drama Critics Circle.
I'm not going to name any names,
Well, what's your secret for avoiding being jaded?
Because every time I see something good, and it does happen, you know, it just really, like, it gives me like a burst of energy, and then the next 10 crap shows, it's okay, you know, you learn to just bear with them because you know, like, something good may just be around the corner.
Something's coming.
Yeah. It could be there, and that first act was terrible, but maybe the second act is going to be a miracle. You never know.
Well, now let's give people a little taste of your reviewing those. Speaking of frogs, Guys and Dolls, a musical, one of the great musicals, but this revival is not very good. I think you gave it two and a half stars on our paper.
Yeah.
What's the problem with it?
Well, the main problem is the core quartet.
The leads.
The four leads. And particularly the lack of chemistry, for like a source I don't really like, but between Oliver Platt and Lauren Graham. Now, Lauren Graham, to me, is the most interesting performance of the show. And it's a tricky performance because usually critics is supposed to say, she was good, she was bad.
Yeah.
What she does is interesting. and people read the review, they don't care about interesting. They want to know, like, am I going to pay $120 for this?
Not for
something interesting.
Yeah.
I think actually, I like the performance because I still think about it. There's something about
She's playing,
it. She played Adelaide, yeah. And there's something very compelling about, like, her line delivery is really odd, and it's unexpected. It's just not the Adelaide that we've been conditioned to expect.
That we. Yeah.
I liked it for that. It's a really pretty brave.
But the other members are underpowered a little bit, aren't they? Oliver Platt,
I think
Craig
so.
Bierko,
I think Oliver
Kate
Platt is really
Grant.
afraid. I mean, you can feel him being afraid of being funny because it's almost as if he doesn't want to be compared to Nathan Lane.
Yes, who had a big triumph in this show in 1992.
Right. But he doesn't replace that with something else. I mean, if you know, it's fine. Don't be funny, but what are you going to do instead? And there's just nothing there instead. Yeah. Craig Bierko and Kate Jennings Grant, who play the other couple, Sarah Brown and what's his name? Sky, of course, are fine, but there's nothing electric about them, which is kind of a problem, especially with Sky. Sky is supposed to be like the kind of hunky, dangerous guy, you know, you're full in love with. And
well, you're a big Craig Bierko fan, aren't you, Susan?
I like him too. I mean, it's really not you know.
I actually thought that Craig Bierko was completely competent in this production, but that was the problem. He was competent, and he was more competent than many. We have time for one more, and that's it.
All right, and Blithe Spirit just opened on Broadway. Big cast, great old Noel Coward play. Does it work?
Well, there's it's an interesting case, again interesting, because some people on that stage seem to have problems with facial expressions, as in they're physically unable to have any.
Is this because they're actors of a certain age who've had little adjustments made to faces?
Some of them perhaps, and not necessarily the one you would think. There's some really...
My money would be on Rupert, frankly.
There's
Rupert
some
Everett.
there's some really amazingly smooth brows in that play that are...
You know what Al Hirschfeld was at the end of his life? He said he was having trouble drawing people because they didn't have faces anymore because of all the plastic surgery.
I really think someone needs to address that problem.
In the review?
Well, actually, I think it's a bigger debate. Yeah. I mean, on stage, it is getting to be a problem, like a real serious problem.
We're so out of time. Well, you've got to come back, Elisabeth.
Yeah, Elisabeth Vincentelli, the new chief drama critic for the New York Post. She's a terrific writer, a very insightful critic, and thanks for coming on Theater Talk. And we'll have you on again to give us your take on the passing scene.
And there's more Broadway to come.
So, Elisabeth, keep the faith, and we'll see you back.
Well, thank you.
And keep off-Broadway coverage going.
Oh, off and off.
Excellent.
There.
The commander is buying you a drink. Raise your glass to him and smile.
Thank you, but I don't drink.
Oh, you most certainly do today. You will drink every last drop of what he offers, and when he buys you another, you will drink that as well. You will drink until he decides you've had enough.
Wake up!